Hello, I'm Mario Toneguzzi, Senior News Editor with Retail Insider. Joining me today is Sylvain Charlebois, who is Senior Director of the Agri-Foods Analytics Lab at Dalhousie University. Thanks, Sylvain, for joining us today.
My pleasure, Mario.
Let's first start. Lots of stuff happening in the world of grocery stores these days. We're going to touch on a couple of topics, but first one, of course, and the biggest news is a competition bureau and what it's looking into, and maybe explain for our readers or our viewers out there, our consumers out there, what is happening with that.
Well, a couple of weeks ago, the Competition Bureau has decided to conduct a study on the food industry to look into, how prices are set. It will look at different strategies. So far, we're not seeing a bureau wanting to look at things up the food chain, but I suspect that they won't have much of a choice. The way I saw the announcement, Mario, is that this is really much a study about the competition bureau itself. Really, it has struggled over the years. One example, the bread the price investigation has been going on for 7 years, still not resolved, still ongoing. Whereas in the U.S., these things can take probably a few months, and that's about it. So we can see that really right now the Competition Bureau is trying to figure out how they can do a better job. So in June of 2023, we're expecting a report. We're not expecting any changes, but perhaps a report that would actually lead to significant changes at the Bureau.
So what is leading all this? Like, why are we even thinking and talking about the idea that the Competition Bureau has to take a look at, say, the grocery industry?
I think it's just political pressure. What's weird though, Mario, is that a couple of weeks before you saw Parliament wanting to investigate into the grocery industry. So the politics were going on the one side of the equation. And of course, regulators are looking at this very differently on their own. Whereas in the US, they often work together, which is why often companies are forced to write checks to compensate consumers. Within months, you actually see a very forceful, authoritative approach in terms of implementing regulations. So it's just I think at some point we're going to really have to figure out how different institutions work together. And right now, there's lots of noise, lots of concerns, and at the end, really, many Canadians just feel unprotected.
So tell me, should the should the grocery industry be afraid if there's ever came about a really full scale investigation and what the practices that have taken place in that industry over the last few years?
I don't think so. Actually, I think the concerns that we're measuring in the Canadian population is due to the lack of understanding. I mean, it's a complicated industry, and of
Yeah.
course, grocers are the portal. We all understand the grocery store, but that's really what all most people understand. It's much more complicated than that. So I actually think that grocers not only want an investigation, they need it, and they need it for their image because
Yeah.
they don't really. And we actually produced the last 6 months reports on greedflation, quote unquote, basically showing to Canadians where the numbers are, and there's no evidence of greedflation at all. And so that's why it's important for people to understand how the business actually works.
So tell me a little bit more about the industry itself right now in Canada and its profitability. What are you seeing there for those the major players, obviously?
Yeah, so in terms of profitability, I think grocers are doing well. Let's be honest here, and Loblaws is doing beyond well, beyond its historical high of the last 6 years. But it's about $1 million a day for 6 months, and they actually had to generate billions and billions of dollars of sales. So you're still talking about a 2 to 4% margin, which is not necessarily high compared to other sectors. But what Loblaws is doing very well. It's faring very well compared to other competitors, and that's probably due to the fact that they control their entire network and they do control verticals in relation to their private labels. No Name and President's Choice, and both brands are doing very well. And my understanding, since prices have frozen over the last couple of weeks, the No Name brand is actually doing even better than before. So,
Yeah. What are your thoughts on where the supply chain is these days for that industry? We all knew and talked about a lot of issues that were happening during the pandemic. You think they've gone beyond that right now, and it's clear sailing, so to speak?
well, actually, I think things are better. Delays are much shorter now. You can see really different ports don't have the same delays. Costs have gone down, although the diesel is still high, quite high. But generally speaking, costs have gone down, and conditions are much more predictable now than just a few months ago. So, and that's really helping. It's helping the food industry in delivering on time, and of course, it does generate less waste, and that's the one thing that people barely talked about during the pandemic. There was a lot of waste across the supply chain due to the lack of efficiency we saw across the board.
And when we talk about different industries across Canada, one of the number one things that people bring up is labor shortage. How is this
Yeah.
industry? How is this industry aid experiencing that and dealing with that?
Well, I mean, labor is an issue for everyone, and it's going to be problematic for the food industry for a very long time. And so, and this is why I think a lot of companies are looking at their business model. They're looking at automation, robotics. A lot of companies that actually are working outside of major cities as well. So recruitment is even harder in the best of times. So you got to think about your business differently as a result of what's happening.
Yeah.
A lot of people are talking about an economic slowdown. Let's see how things go in 2023 with labor. My guess is that people will continue to work, will have jobs. It's just companies will probably be managed differently.
Yeah, and when you look at the industry on the whole, obviously, one of the biggest impacts is food prices, right? And
Yeah.
how that's been elevated over the last year or so. Um, do you think, like, what impact does that have on the industry itself? When you see the prices going up, do you think the sales are going to go down because of that, or the sales are they just going to be you know, put in different little silos, and maybe the more discount and no name brand type thing entities will benefit?
Well, I don't know if you look at the latest data coming out of StatsCan, but the pie is shrinking. The food retail pie is actually shrinking in Canada. It shrunk by 5% year to year. So, in terms of dollars, we're selling less. So, because of food inflation, clearly we're selling less in volume as well. So, and that's quite normal given the fact that we saw a very jumpy marketplace the last couple of years. So, now grocers have to fight even more to retain market share, and that's going to continue for quite some time.
So do you think that will continue, like in terms of the behavior of consumers? Like, what does those numbers mean? Does that mean they're eating less or buying or being more judicious in what they're purchasing?
Well, I think they're first of all, they're selling less in volume because food service is taking over a little bit more.
Yeah.
Secondly, you're seeing more and more consumers trading sideways. They're using different channels to get to food. Dollar stores, convenience stores. People are changing address to buy food. That's the other issue. So, but supermarkets, and grocery stores are selling less food in volume compared to last year. And
Mhm.
so that's necessarily not a good sign because it really will get the major players like Loblaws, Empire, Sobeys, and Metro, and of course we have to add a Walmart and Costco to play hardball to actually
Yeah.
get to retain market share. So that's why, yeah, food prices are still going up, but that pressure will probably help consumers over time.
Yeah. What about the e-commerce side of things? Do you think we've hit a peak in terms of consumption by consumers using those channels when they're doing grocery shopping, or are we going to see a continued growth, albeit smaller?
That's a good question. I think there's still a lot of activity online because really there are new habits out there. We haven't really measured that space in recent months, but my guess is that people are still active online and it will remain so for quite some time, much more so than before COVID. I think because the market is much more domesticated. We're more at home, so people actually there is a good group of consumers who have the advantage and the financial capacity to actually spend more money online, and that's going to remain.
And the other, one of the other challenges I wanted to ask you about from the grocery store sector, the bigger chains again on the the big box type things, is the competition out there in smaller formats. Even in convenience stores, grab and go type stuff.
Yeah.
The M&Ms of the world, etc. What impact do you think that's having on their share of the market?
Well, I mean, it's they're there for sure, but I think more people are aware of their options because they actually were forced to look for different options during COVID.
Yeah,
And if even after COVID, a lot of people have actually moved. A lot of people are in new neighborhoods, they're exploring. Food inflation is pushing people to visit different stores as well. So a lot of people are actually hunting strategically, I think more so than before. So it's an active marketplace, and I think it's going to remain like that for a while.
I was thinking as well of there's been, you mentioned marketplace. There's been a number of online marketplaces like out there that are farmers markets type thing, right?
Yeah.
Bringing more local food to your home and a closer thing. So, yeah. And the other thing I was curious about, and then the last question I have for you, and maybe it's a shot out of the blue, Sylvain, but you ever think that there could be other players that enter into this sector? Like, Walmart did so years ago, right? Obviously a merchandise
Yeah.
store, and then it added grocery to its offering. Eh, Any possibility that some of these other big box retailers, uh, whether it's just throwing out, whether there's a Home Depot or a Canadian Tire, go enough?
I think I the one I mean going into the game market as a grocer is going to be tough. I don't see any major entrants. I know there's lots of rumors around Aldi and Little. I don't think it's going to happen, Mario. The one wild card I'm following very closely is Alimentation Couche-Tard. Alimentation Couche-Tard has the motivation to leave. They're making a lot of money selling gas, but we all know what's going on with the with the car these days to convert gas money into food money. They've been very good at it,
Yeah.
but they can't rely on that model for a very long time. So I actually am expecting Alimentation Couche-Tard to make an acquisition at some point, and they actually did try unsuccessfully to buy the seventh largest grocer in the world, which is Carrefour. They weren't able to do it, but
Yeah.
I'm keeping an eye close on Alimentation Couche-Tard.
All right, super. Thanks, Sylvain, for joining us again today.
My pleasure. Take care.
All right, that was Sylvain Charlebois, who is Senior Director of the Agri-Foods Analytics Lab at Dalhousie University. I'm Mario Toneguzzi, Senior News Editor at Retail Insider. Thanks for joining us today.